Mike.
I'm Brad.
And this is Ministry Chemistry.
Neutron, proton, mass effect, lyrical oxidation, your irrelevant mass spectrograph, your electron volt, atomic energy erupting as I get all open on pow.
Here we go.
Welcome back to another episode of Ministry Chemistry where, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is our 30th episode.
30!
Holy smokes.
How long ago was that for you, Brad?
A long time. Wait,
The age of 30?
I don't remember it.
30. Fun fact, you know how your golden birthday is when you turn the year on the same number as the day? So like
That's your golden birthday?
that's your golden birthday. My birthday is the 30th of a month, and so my 30th birthday was my golden birthday. And also fun fact, my sister was born on the 27th of a month, and she turned 27 the same year I turned 30. So we had our golden birthdays the same year.
Whoa.
That
I know.
wouldn't that mean you would have multiple golden birthdays though?
No, you only turn like 5 once or 16 once. Right? What are you thinking? How do you think it works?
Well, I'm thinking, couldn't you have turned 15 on the 15th day of the 15th year? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, year doesn't have anything to do with it.
So couldn't you have turned 15 on the 15th of the month and 30 on the 30th of the month? Couldn't both of those things happen?
If you have 2 different birthdays.
Yeah.
Like if your birthday is April 30th.
Oh.
You're like, oh, this is one of those I wish you could see his face. He's like, oh.
It's usually my
get
face
it.
we
I
want to
know.
look at.
It's so great. I just thought
This is what it's like to be me.
Oh, there it was. Anyway, welcome to the 30th episode of Ministry Chemistry. We've had so much fun. And today we are really excited for this episode because we thought we'd take it all the way back to what started this whole crazy harebrained idea, which is talking about what we all love the most. And that's working with students in ministry. So today we are going to tell you some stories from the trenches. And if some of these students are listening, we love you. Thank you for letting us use your stories without permission. And if you're listening and you're like, I wish they wouldn't have said that. No one knows it's you. Come on. Only you know it's you. And we love you too. So gentlemen, I think my first question to us would be, what stands out to you that makes a good story about a student that's able to be told? Like when you tell stories
That's able to be told.
yeah. Like when you go home
just
at
lost
night
me.
Yeah.
or you're sitting around the staff table, the next week and you're like, oh, I got a story about a student I've got to tell you. What makes that story impressionable?
I think it has to be a story that shouldn't be told for it to be impressionable.
Really?
Like, I probably shouldn't be telling you this because it could get me fired, but there's no way I can keep this to myself. Like, you got to know this. This was the craziest thing ever.
But the only thing you could do is change their name.
Yeah. Or not tell your boss about it in a staff
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, depending on the size of your church or the group you're talking to, I've had times where I can't use pronouns. As soon as I say like he or she, like someone's going to be like, I know who that kid was. Or even a grade, right? Like I had a middle schooler. No, can't do that because you'll know who it is.
There was this one time, this kid who, yeah.
Not so recently.
But I feel like generally people know that teenagers do stupid things. So even if you tell them a story that's non-kosher, it's like, yeah, it was teenagers. Now, when you self-deprecate by telling them something that you did that was stupid from the trenches. Yeah. I think about the dude from the NYWC. Yeah. Do you remember? So they did the stories from the trenches and they did the top 3 and it was what's the stupidest thing that you had done. So this one guy tells the story of his kids locked him in the van.
In the trailer.
In the trailer. They locked him in the trailer. They had done a concert youth band, locked him in the trailer. Well, he
Drop trout.
He went to his birthday suit while he was in the trailer.
Why?
So that when they opened the door, it was a surprise.
What made him do that?
And he told this.
That's a terrible
And they allowed him to
story.
share this story in front of 5,000 youth workers.
Friend, if you're the one that this is your story and you're listening, I am judging you. You don't do that. Wow.
Yeah,
that would
actually,
Did he get fired?
did that.
No?
Did they open the door and see him in his birthday suit?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
And didn't he chase some of them?
Chased. He chased them naked?
Naked.
No. No. No.
He had a really long beard too.
Oh, golly.
Yeah, he's
but
very. Like,
I don't think it covered
like young,
anything.
like early ZZ Top. If
Yeah.
anyone knows who
Well,
that is.
here's why I asked that question, because I often ask questions because I already know the answer that I want to give. And the answer that I wanted to give was like, sometimes students give the best understandings of scripture based on analogies adults would never draw. And those are some of the stories that I love the most. Like I had a kid once, liken the entire process of knowing Jesus, like prevenient grace and a justification and a sanctifying grace and all that, to different Marvel heroes, superheroes. It's like Iron Man before he had his, and then it's like, this is genius. This is brilliant. It was so good. So I love telling stories like that just look at scripture and Jesus in a whole new light that adults miss out on.
I thought we were going a totally different direction with our stories from the trenches.
No, we totally can. I'm just saying.
I have more nightmare stories.
So tell me some of your nightmare stories of the trenches.
My first year,
What happened?
everything.
Really?
It was. There were a lot of horrendous things that happened my first year. The first time we went on our summer retreat, which is our biggest thing of the school year, of the church calendar, I can't even in a succinct way tell you everything that happened. It was horrendous. I actually thought I was getting fired because of something that happened. I had some students leave a girl alone. We're supposed to stay in groups of 3 minimum, and they left a girl alone at Cedar Point. She was off by herself.
Cedar Point's a giant amusement park in northern Ohio, for those who don't know.
And so when the single alone girl texted me, I went to find her. But the other girls continued to ride rides, and they, quote unquote, lost her. So instead of calling me to say, hey, we lost so-and-so, they called her parents.
Oh.
Who were 3.5 hours away
Right.
and couldn't do anything. So then I had to have that conversation with a parent. And so that evening, I sat that group down and said, this is why we do things. We have things that we have to worry about. We have to be safe about certain things. Tried to explain it the best I could. And one of these young ladies thought I was attacking, quote unquote. And so she got up to remove herself. She's like, I don't like this. And just hopped up. And she happened to be sitting, we were at a picnic table, happened to be sitting right next to me.
In broad daylight.
In broad daylight, I had 2 of my adult workers there with me to be witness of the conversation. And when she stood up, I just kind of grabbed right above her elbow. I didn't squeeze it hard or anything. Totally flipped out that I grabbed her arm.
Wow.
And we had her sit back down. I explained everything. Everybody seemed like we were on the same page. And then within 45 minutes, she had called her boyfriend, who was also back home, and he posted it on Facebook that I did that and how I shouldn't be touching them.
Brad.
And so as soon as that happened, I'm like,
terrible.
I just lost my job, and it was my first year. And so that, in a nutshell, that was our first retreat.
That's
and there was
awful.
so much more to that weekend, but I'm not going in.
Whew. Mike,
Thank Jesus.
do you have a I almost got fired story?
I've probably almost gotten fired for multiple times, but when you're a it's harder to get fired when you're a volunteer.
Yeah.
So,
well.
Yeah, that was my only protection, I think, for
Yeah.
multiple years. So my first winter retreat was I went with Brad because I was basically like, we had a small team of volunteers, but I was basically like it, and we only had 2 girls sign up for winter retreat. And I was like, well, I can't take 2 middle school girls by myself to this winter retreat.
boundary, yeah.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
So I call up Brad and I was like, hey, man, this is the situation. Do you mind if we just like piggyback with you guys? Absolutely. The more the merrier. So I have these 2 girls meet us here. And these girls essentially hate each other.
What?
They're like they're best friends that hate each other.
Frenemies.
We've had, up to this point, we've already had a love triangle involving these 2 girls and a boy. And they've had like multiple arguments and spats. So I'm like, this is going to be great. And one of the girls, her parents weren't exactly like, let's say they weren't the most supportive. So to start this trip off, the one girl meets us here. The other girl's parents reach out to me and they're like, hey, she's going to be late. We're going to try to be at the church on time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no problem. If not, you have to bring her there, which is an hour and a half away. Okay. So I'd already told them, I'm like, we're with another group. I'm not asking them to wait for anything. We're on their time schedule.
Sure.
Okay. So we meet here. They're not here in time. We go to lunch. I'm updating them the whole time. We're not at lunch at time. We stop at Walmart. We go get snacks. We're not there. The dad texts me or calls me, hey, we're like 5 minutes from Walmart. I'm like, we're in the van. So if you pull in before we pull out, awesome. If not, we're gone.
Sure.
He
was not
literally
difficult.
sees the van like pulling out of the parking lot.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, I'm not asking him to wait. I
a
told
high-speed
you.
chase?
I let you know. Brad sees this. He doesn't see the van. He knows nothing about this. So I'm like, I'm not putting that pressure on him. I'm carrying this. So Brad pulls out and he sees that there's a wreck at the intersection where we pull out. So Brad goes a different way to get around the wreck. The dad of this girl gets stuck in traffic for an hour and a half because he got off at an interstate, got off at this intersection to meet us. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to go there. So he gets off to meet us, and then he has to sit in traffic for an hour and a half to get back out because he literally missed the van by like a minute and a half.
But he
and
still brought his daughter to the...
He still brought her, and the death stare that I got when he got there, oh boy. And then that same weekend, this was a fun story from the trench. This is like my favorite story from the trenches. So my girls are roomed up with Brad's leaders and his girls. I'm roomed with Brad and his boys. We just had this conversation yesterday. We were just reminiscing yesterday with one of Brad's former students. Brad's like passed out. Brad had done the winter retreat before. This was my very first.
Okay.
Brad knew what it was. So basically it's a bunk room with 12 bunk beds. There's a bunch of boys in there. Brad can sleep through a tornado apparently. I have to have like perfect still, quiet, white noise, darkness, all this stuff. I'm not going to sleep. 2:00 in the morning, I see 4 boys streak by me going out of the dorm room.
Why are all your stories about naked people?
Yeah.
They're boys.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Oh.
I can't remember if I know there's at least one was
Yeah.
definitely like
Yeah.
butt naked. Streaking. I don't know if all of them were like full naked. But yeah, they're streaking at 2 a.m. And I was just like, I don't care enough to stop this. So I did nothing. Plus, it was my first winter retreat. I was brand new. It's my first year as a youth
You're
pastor.
still an adult that's like, this isn't
Yeah,
right.
but I'm just like,
It's 2:00 in the morning. I'm really tired.
This is-
Were they butt naked?
Yeah.
Let me just
it's
point
like-
out for anyone listening, and both of you, if you don't know, this is the difference between female leaders and male leaders. Right here, this moment.
well, we
my
weren't in
experience has been-
a co-ed
Nope.
dorm.
My experience has been guys are like, oh, they'll be fine. I'm going to still sleep because I'm important. Whereas like female leaders are like, what's happening? And why are 4 girls up? And what's going on? And I should be there and help and make sure everything's okay. This is not how men operate. Clearly. Go ahead.
Listen, this is like I said, 1:30, 2:00 in the morning. This is coming from
It's
a guy.
not late for a teenager
Okay.
or a person who works with teenagers.
All right. Let me set the tone of this for you. This is how I feel about
I
this.
got it.
I told my wife, if we have an emergency, pray it doesn't happen between midnight and 6 a.m.
Oh, in your marriage and
because
in your home.
I'm not your guy. My wife had surgery once,
Oh.
like on her belly button.
Wait a second.
And her stitch broke loose, and
Oh,
she's literally having to use like feminine products because it's bleeding so bad. And I was like,
gosh.
"You're good. Just go back to sleep."
Oh my gosh.
So it's 2 a.m.
No,
I don't care if the whole dorm was streaking at that point. I'm not getting up to stop it.
I have another friend like you because I woke up one morning, spending the night at some friend's house, woke up 8 a.m. in excruciating pain, knock on their door, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like, guys, I'm in some serious pain. She thought I was like, hey, I'm up and ready and let's go. Now, anyone who knows me knows I'm not a morning person, so that was not what I was doing. I had a kidney stone and needed to get to the emergency room. But like you, she's like, it's not my time to get up yet. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Can your emergency wait like half hour?
You gotta get up
Can
now.
you push snooze on that emergency? Yeah.
Anyway, 4 boys go streaking. Go.
See, I mean, that's it. I've just
That's
like,
the story?
yeah, that's it.
pretty
It was
much
just
it.
Okay.
Well, and what's funny is like I said, I'm brand new to like ministry, first year's youth pastor, first winter retreat. I'm going to this Christian event.
You didn't think boys were going to get up and streak.
When
at
I
2
think
a.m.
Christian event, ain't nobody naked.
Yeah. Now, had I gone to like, a football overnight when I was in high school, yeah, probably everyone would have been streaking for different purposes.
So
but these boys are just streaking like just because they thought it was stupid.
In any of those stories, now looking back, would you have done anything different, either one of you?
I was sleeping, so. Oh, in his. In mine, oh.
If I go to winter retreat this year and someone streaks, will I do something?
Yes.
If we're in an all boys dorm, I'd probably be like, just don't go outside.
It's winter.
I probably wouldn't, to be honest. Yeah.
So here's I didn't almost get fired, but I think someone wanted me fired. This is the story.
Ooh, salacious.
Oh, it was. So there was a basketball coach in town during winter who was putting together a girls' club team, so not even through the school. And so multiple girls from different schools and youth groups were a part of this team. And I talked to some other youth ministers in town, and the coach was holding practice right during our youth times on Sunday evenings, claiming that's the only time he could get a gym, which I to this day do not believe is the case. And so I wrote him a kind email asking, hey, I've talked to some other youth ministers. Is there any way to either do this every other week or to make some other accommodation on a Sunday afternoon so that your whole team doesn't miss their church youth group time? I did not hear back from him, but I heard back from his wife, who said, how dare you suggest that my husband is pulling students away from church for a sporting event? This is the only time he could get a gym. They can attend at other times. I mean, she was just going on and on and on and on. And I eventually I wrote back, I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insinuate that. This is what I was thinking. We really just don't want to lose them for an entire season from their youth group communities. And so I thought maybe there was some flexibility, and I didn't know if he was aware that that was what was happening. Well, she scheduled a meeting with my pastor. My pastor came to me and goes, do you know anything about this? And I said, yeah, let me show you the emails. And here was my heart behind it. And I'm so sorry that you're having to deal with this. I didn't know she'd go directly to you. He's like, no, I just want the fuller picture. So he had the meeting with her. She sat down and she said, I want to tell you about something. He's like, yes, I have the emails. Let's talk through them. And he said, immediately she just shut down and was like, you have the emails? And he's like, oh yeah, Renee shared them with me because she was so worried that you were so concerned. And he was like, the meeting I think was supposed to be like a half hour. It was like 10 minutes and she was out the door and he came to see me and he's like, I'm pretty sure she had different plans for the way this would go. And I was like, thanks. I wasn't even trying to I didn't even know. I didn't even know. But come to find out, I know this family was one of great influence in the town where I was living at the time, and thought that some weight could be shifted to
the dirty
Oh, yeah.
South.
a little bit. And I'm really thankful for the way the pastor handled it. And I'm really sad that was this individual's heart towards me, because
I'm thankful for email.
oh my
Man, your
goodness.
story's so
Oh yeah, and all that over
Your
email,
story's
right?
so serious. So serious.
Well, I mean, that was a story from
That's like a real problem.
it was a story of
That's for real.
almost
You're
getting
gonna tell some
fired.
like fun story of like.
Oh, I've
having
got
to
some fun stories. So what's
smack
one of your
a
fun stories?
Oh, so this is a really funny story.
Okay.
Now I'm sure this has happened to a lot of people because like youth group and I can't say it. Youth group and balls go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Balls.
Yeah.
Balls.
Yeah.
Cool.
I had
Cool.
So one of our former student now, I think she had a bad experience maybe as a middle schooler or a kid, but anytime we played any kind of sport that involved balls, dodgeball, volleyball, kickball, she was out. I don't want nothing
Because she
to do
doesn't play
with it.
sports, or she
No,
didn't
it
want
was
to hear you
just
say the
like,
word balls.
like we would play volleyball, and she would basically be a warm body on the court because anytime the volleyball was hit towards her, she would just kind of like shoulder out, kind of duck out. Like I'm not hitting that because if I hit that, that might hit my face. So anyway, basically after like 5 years as her youth pastor, begging to play multiple games.
Okay.
Dodgeball was a no bueno. Volleyball, she would at least be a warm body out there.
Well, and for folks listening, Mike's youth group, they're not that large in numbers, so you need every person to play
Yeah.
all the time.
So for context, there were times we played 9 square with empty squares. That's a real thing.
So sad. It's so sad.
We just played square.
Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, after like 5 years, I got her, fully involved. She's playing. She's having a blast playing kickball. Okay, we're on the same team. She's playing third base. I'm playing like outfield. Okay.
Okay.
Someone kicks the ball to me. The runner rounds second. He's going to third. I see he's going to round third and go home. So I rear back as hard as I can to throw the ball and burn him out. And as soon as the ball lets loose, McKenna turns around to face me, and the ball hits her right in the face and knocks her glasses off. I know that's not uncommon. I literally go over to check on her. The imprint of the dodgeball was on her glasses, not on her face, on her glasses. It was like etched into her glasses.
Yeah.
It could not have happened to
Anyone
a
else.
worse person than someone who has been already traumatized by playing, dodgeball type sports.
Right. That's funny. That's one of those lessons too that's like in both churches where I got to help separate ministries, middle school and high school, or junior high and high school, depending on which one it was. I did one activity that both groups did, but we did it as a high school activity and a middle school activity. And that was the color wars with the powder paint.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we do play is like where you throw a sock of the powder, you chuck it at people to, as a part of, Duck, Duck, Goose, or like a dodgeball, or like whatever you're playing. And so my middle schoolers this one year, you got an 8th grader just like nailing 6th graders. And they're like, oh, this hurts. And I'm like, and you wanted to play with the high schoolers. You don't get to play with you can't even take an 8th grader's throw. And the 8th grader came the next year to high school, and he's like, oh, you weren't kidding. And I was like, nope. It is every man for
Now it's
himself
your
out
turn
there.
to die.
So fun.
Come on. We all have a little bit of vindictive nature. There's always that kid, and you're like, yeah, I was glad to see you get nailed with the dodgeball. Come on. I love you like Jesus does, but I'm glad you got nailed with a dodgeball.
Well, some kids need to
Reality
learn their place sometimes.
All right, it's Brad's turn.
Fun story.
Fun story. Well, I'll throw myself under the bus.
Here's our shocked face.
This is something that happens rather frequently. I'm really focused when I'm in front of my youth group trying to administer my lessons. And so I don't even remember what the lesson was about. But I had used an analogy which, looking back, was probably not the best one. But a part of it, I used the word ecstasy. And I had a little kid in the front row raise their hand and said, "What's ecstasy?" I was moving towards this grand conclusion. I was so excited about getting to basically the climax. Sorry, climax.
Oh, jeez.
Of the whole thing. of the whole thing. And he has to ask, what is ecstasy? I wanted to keep moving on. So what just came out of my mouth was, Google it. And I kept going. The look on my adult leaders' faces was both of shock and awe and turn off the internet.
Yeah, you can't Google that.
They're like, don't Google it. Please don't Google it.
But I do stick my foot in my mouth quite often. But that was one that stands out and is brought up quite often, actually.
That's a good one.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. One of my favorite stories is, and it's so silly. My first Sunday at a new church, they did like a Q&A with Renee. You can ask her anything, whatever. Well, this kid, and I don't know where he got it. I don't know if he brought it from home and thought it'd be funny. I don't know if he got it from our church kitchen. I don't know. But he comes up and he goes, I have this potato. And it was like a raw potato. And he's like, my question for you is, will you take a bite of this potato? And I'm like, it's your first Sunday and you don't, yes, I'm taking any challenge like that a student extends to prove that I'm cool enough. So I take a bite of the potato. Well, my last Sunday at that same church, I'd forgotten the story. Like I'd been there for years and forgotten the story. And he comes up, he goes, I have one last question for you. And he brought a potato and he said, will you take a bite of the potato? And I was like,
That's cool, though.
yeah, it was I was like, that's really cool.
I love it when kids hang on to like little simple stuff
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
seems insignificant in the moment, but years later they bring up something and you're like, that stuck. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but that stuck.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it connects them to, the whole point of, a youth group is connecting kids to something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
The whole point of a church is connecting to something bigger than yourself. So stories that help that happen is pretty.
Well, these are perfect examples that God uses imperfect people.
That is
Preach,
correct.
boy, preach.
That is true. Any final stories from the trenches? Yeah, we got some serious. We got some fun in there.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else come to mind that you're like, oh, I gotta let this story be known?
Nothing nothing. Just
No more
I don't
naked
know.
stories.
no more. No, thank God. No more naked stories.
So
Thank God for that.
in true ministry chemistry fashion, we're gonna challenge you. What are some fun stories, either from your childhood or stories that you're, creating with kids now, and how are you pouring into them and being a voice in their lives, and how are they being a voice in your life? I think that's important too. For Ministry Chemistry, I'm Renee.
Still Mike.
And Brad.
We'll see you next time.